Chapter 2, A Job for Hans. The Royal Theatre in Copenhagen, above at the left, and the houses in Copenhagen today look much like they did in Hans Christian Andersen's time. Hans found a room in big, busy Copenhagen. Then he hurried to the Royal Theatre. He talked to a dancer, but she couldn't help him. He talked to the director, but he couldn't help either. Now what, thought Hans. He had almost no money. Maybe he should try the Royal Choir School. After all, he could sing. So Hans met Mr. Sibony, head of the choir school. He and his friends helped Hans. Soon Hans was busy. He did some singing. He did some dancing. He wrote some stories. Hans made these paper cutouts when he was a boy in Odense. Some days Hans had a job. Some days he didn't. He was often hungry, but he prayed a lot, and he kept on trying. This is Christian VIII, was the Danish king who helped Hans. At last, someone talked to the king about him. The king said Hans must go back to school. He would pay Hans's fees. The school was in a town called Slaglis. Hans was older than the other boys, but he didn't know as much. The head of the school made fun of him. He called him a stupid boy. That hurt Hans. The head also said Hans must not write stories, but Hans wrote them anyway. Writing stories always made him feel better. At last, Hans went back to study in Copenhagen. He passed a big test and wrote even more. He wrote a travel book that people liked. He wrote a play. People liked the play too. He wrote a book of poems. People loved it. Then Hans knew what he was. No more school for him. He was a writer. Today, school children visit Hans Christian Andersen's home and look at the statue of the beloved storyteller.